Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining me this morning. Great to have you here. It's been a busy old weekend here, and I hope it's been the same for you. And I hope you've been having a wonderful time. You can see that it's actually been so busy. I've neglected to actually shave this morning, so I do apologise for the slightly haggard appearance that I have this morning, but that's not going to prevent us getting stuck into profitable losing. Now, what we're talking about today is profitably losing, which on the face of it sounds kind of weird, but actually it is literally, it's the most important thing. If you can't do this, you can't win. And it's an entire mindset approach to successful horse racing, particularly when you're looking for that long-term profit. Now, before we get started, if I could ask you just to familiarize yourselves with the setup. So if you're new to a live stream, then if you're on Facebook, it's nice and simple. It's the comment section just below this video. You're going to see that. Drop a message in there now. Say hi. Click the thumbs up button. So click the thumbs up button, let you know you like the video, and drop a message in to say hi. Where you drop that message in, exactly like that, exactly right, designer stubble, thank you. When you drop that message in, that is also where you can ask any questions you like, any questions at all about what we're talking about today, about horse racing in general, about the race advisor, about, do you know what, whatever comes into your mind, think about it, drop in the message, and I will answer it, if I can. If you are over on YouTube, it's very similar, but it looks a little bit different. First of all, please do like the video, hit the thumbs up button, just so it lets know everyone that you are enjoying what we're producing. Then you'll see probably on the right hand side of this video, kind of over here somewhere, but it may be different if you're on a mobile device, because there are literally so many possible ways of watching these live streams now. It could be different on every single device, but for most people I think it's either going to be over here on the right or here down below. You'll see a kind of a chat box on YouTube, and in that chat box, that's where you can drop a message saying hi. Please do that now. Drop that message right now, say hi, and that's also where you get to ask any questions that you want as well, so put that in there. Morning Ray, thank you very much. Morning Mark, morning Michael, morning Roberto, morning Chili Chap, thank you. Paul, good morning, great to see you here. Now if you're on Facebook, you're not going to see the messages from people on YouTube, and if you're on YouTube, you're not going to see the messages from people on Facebook, but fear not, I can see all the messages in the clever streaming software that combines everything. Okay, now we've got all of that out of the way. Let's jump into profitable losing. And by the way, please do ask any questions at all, ask. So I'm expecting this to take about half an hour or so, what we're going to go through today. Then I'm going to come back, I'm going to look at any questions that you have. And then from there, we'll see what we're doing. But normally I'll probably wrap it up around that time unless there's a specific request. Cool. Okay. So morning, Philippe. Great you could join us. Morning, Michael. Morning, Mark again. Morning, Aria. Great to have you here. So good to see everybody here. Okay. So profitable losing. That's what we're looking at today. Andy, I'm going to say that good morning to you just before I start. Awesome. Thank you for saying it. Thank you, John. Great to see you. Okay. So I'm going to jump over now to some slides. Now that's a little bit. I don't think we need to see quite that many things. So we'll just we'll move the screen around like this till we get to this position. Please excuse the stacked boxes in the background. We've still got building work going on. There may be drilling noise. My daughter's at home today. You may hear her in the background, although I think she's just gone down for a nap. There are potentially noises around, but I've done my best to mitigate as many of them as possible while we still seem to be in upheaval a little bit. Certainly upheaval here. Okay, so sorry, just looking at some of the comments over there on YouTube, Mark and Sean, and absolutely right. We can talk about gubbing later, John, if you want to. That's absolutely no problem at all. But right now, I'm going to jump into profitable losing. Okay, right, here we go. Profitable losing. You can't win without this. And you truly cannot win without this. And like I said, if you've come through an email, you've heard me say this morning already, there are no shiny bells here. There's no shiny whistles. There's no big buttons and massive figures and huge ROIs. This is the most important stuff, but some would see it as possibly being a bit more boring. So they don't really talk about it. And people don't talk about the stuff that's a little bit more boring, yet it's the boring stuff that makes us profit. So actually, we've got to talk about it. We can talk about the cool, awesome, exciting stuff as well, but we got to talk about this kind of the day-to-day, how we do this, because otherwise we can't make that long-term profit. What we're doing, if we're not doing that, is we're gambling. And we don't want to do that. We want to invest in good bets where we've got an advantage, where we can actually win long-term. This is what we're looking at today. And this is profitable losing. And what I'm going to cover today, over the next 20, 30 minutes or so, I'm going to cover why you can't win until you lose. Sounds a bit like tautology or tautologic, or however you can use that word, but you cannot win until you lose. That is a fact. We're going to look at losing streaks. We're going to look at downswing durations, and we're going to understand how this affects our return on investment, how this affects our bankrolls, and why it is so important to do this. Okay. Now, here we go. How can you live like this? How can you live like this? You hit the button, the thumbs up, the smiley face, the heart if you're on YouTube. I don't know. The kids do something like this, don't they? Whatever. Anyway, it's the heart, it's the smiley face, it's the thumbs up, it's something like that. And I will come back to that question, John, about gubbing. But yes, it'd be awesome if we could have a law to stop bookies gubbing. Right. Okay. So this is what we're going to be covering. And we're going to cover this. Each of these 4 items are really important that we get under our belts, that we implement. Without implementing these, we literally cannot win in the long term. You will continuously lose if you don't implement what we're going to talk about today. So it's super, super unprofitable. Now, the first thing I want to look at is you can't win until you lose. And I've got a fancy graphic here, and that's just to kind of light the screen up a bit. But it's about what we're going to talk about that is actually the most important, because the first point I want to cover here is back bettors lose more than they win. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Back bettors lose more than they win. I'm actually going to see if I can put this up on the screen. I think I can put this up on the screen, he says. He says, hopefully. Hang on, bear with me a second. I'm sure I can put this up on the screen somehow. I think it might be here. Let's have a go. Here we go. Back bettors win. No, that's wrong. Back bettors lose more than they win. Okay, let's see if we can get this up on your screens. Shows a title. Here we are. Update. Oh. Okay, awesome. We got this on the screen. Right. Back bettors lose more than they win. Okay, this is so important to understand. Okay, this is so important to understand. As a back bettor, 99% of you will be losing more bets than you win. Okay, 99% of you will be losing more bets than you win, unless you predominantly bet odds on, or you bet Dutch bets. I'm just talking about straight win bets here. Unless you bet predominantly odds on, you are going to lose more bets than you win. Okay, we got to get our heads around this now, because if we think about this, let's say, do you know what? Leave me a message right now. Let me know what you think is a really good strike rate for win bets. Put that now in the chat, in the message, whatever. Let me know what you think is a good strike rate. A win strike rate. Okay. And while you're doing that, I'm going to come back into the chat because it's on fire this morning, which is absolutely awesome. YouTube guys, you are absolutely on fire over there. Philippe, what is the man doing? I hadn't actually looked at it like that, Philippe, but you have a very good point. I'm not going to go there. When I put it on the slide, I thought it was just a picture of a man being sad. But you're right. It could be many things what the man is doing. We'll skip over what the man is doing. Leave me a message down below right now, or on the side, whether you're on YouTube, on Facebook, it doesn't matter. Drop me a message. What do you think is a good back strike rate? 15%, 20%, 25%, 30%, 35%. What is a good strike rate for you in the win market? Okay, what is a good strike rate for you in the win market? Okay, 95%, Philippe. Well, good luck with that one. 30%, John 35%, Reed 73%, Ray 60%, Roberto 80%, Andy Clark 20 to 30%, Michael 33%, Paul 37.5%. John Gibson, depending on the odds, Marcus, bigger bets, less bets, that's cool. Okay, so we got a few of you here who are looking like high odds stuff, 60%, 80%, all those sorts of figures. You guys are obviously going to be betting or focusing on in the back to win market. You must be focusing odds on or Dutch betting or some sort of multiple thing like that, not single back bets unless you're odds on. Most of everyone else is sitting in the kind of the 20, 30, 35% kind of range. Okay, now, and that's kind of what I expected. 30% is where most bettors sit as a good back to win strike rate. And the reason most bettors sit there as a good back to win strike is because that's what favorites win. So we automatically think that's pretty good. Okay, and that's sort of like, we don't even it doesn't even come into our minds that it's because of favorites, but that's pretty much the reason why. It's because we expect favorites to win 30% of the time, and that's usually the ballpark for where most of us then think a good back to win strike rate is. So if we say 30%, let's pitch it right in the middle there, 30%. That means we are losing 7 out of 10 bets. Now let's just get our heads around that. Let's say we're averaging 3 bets a day, which again is a comfortable level for most bettors. 3 bets a day. That means we are going to lose for 2 solid days out of every 3. We're going to lose every bet for 2 days out of every 3 days betting. On average. Okay, we could lose a lot more, or we could have some really good days. But on average, if we have a strike rate of 30% and we have 3 selections a day, we are going to lose 2 full days of bets, at least 6 bets, at least every 3 days. Now, we got to get our heads around that. That doesn't mean we're going to make a loss. We can still make a profit from it. But psychologically, we've got to get our heads around the fact that we are going to be losing that often if we are backing to win at what is generally considered a decent strike rate, 30%. Okay, let's get our heads around that for a minute. Now, if we flip this the other way, let me flip this the other way. Okay, let's put number 2 up here. Just put number 2 up here. Let's flip this around. And now imagine we're lay bettors. Okay. Lay bettors win more than they lose. But when they lose most of the profit that's been made. Okay, I'm going to let that sink in for just a second. Lay bettors win more bets than they lose. But when they do lose, they lose most of the profit that's been made. This also is the same for place bettors, generally speaking, as well. Okay, back to place, lay to win. Similar sort of concept here. If we've got a high strike rate, usually the odds are lower. So those folk like Roberto, Ray, who are talking about 60%, 80%, 90% strike rates, those sorts of numbers, when we have those sorts of numbers, we win more often than we lose. But when we lose most of the profit that's been made. So the journey is different because for back to win bettors, we spend most of our time on a decline like this. Most of our time, our profits are doing this, and then we get a winner, it goes bang, straight back up. And then we start that decline again. That's back to win bettors. Lay to win bettors do the opposite. They go up like this, they get a loss, bang, straight back down, and then they start building up again. So lay bettors will spend most of their time seeing a profit, but then they have to deal with the fact that a single loss is going to wipe out 90% or 80% of that profit. Back bettors have to deal with continual losses, but when they get a win, it's going to cover those losses and make a small profit. And then we start again. And this is the journey that we have if we're long-term bettors. This is the journey. It doesn't matter what side we're sitting here. It doesn't matter whether we're backside or lay side. Our journey is going to be filled up of a moments of frustration. Okay. And that's what we've got to stop from happening. That's what we've got to stop from happening to us. Our journey is going to be filled up of moments of frustration because if we're back to win bettors, we're going to be losing most of the time. Most of our bets are going to lose. Psychologically, we've got to get our heads around the fact that we are going to lose most of the time, and occasionally we're going to win. then most of that profit is slowly going to drift away as we go through that next losing streak until we hit the next winner. And then we'll win again and we'll make a little bit more profit, and they'll put us a little bit higher than we were last time we made a profit. And then most of that profit's going to slowly drift away again until the next one. That's the life of a back to win bettor. The life of a late to win bettor is kind of the opposite. Most of the time we're going to win and be like, this is awesome, we're doing so well, and then we're going to hit a loss. But because our wins are so small compared to our stake sizes, that loss is going to wipe out a massive chunk of profit. So we're going to hit that loss and we're going to be like, damn. Probably not the word we'd use, but whatever. We're going to use a word like that, and we're going to get down there. And then we're going to be kind of back near where we started, but a little bit higher. We're going to have a little bit more profit after that loss than when we started, but most of the profit we've been seeing is going to have disappeared. And then we're going to start again, winning relatively continuously until we hit the next loss, and bang, we're going to lose 80-90% of that profit again. Whether it's one loss or a couple back-to-back, doesn't really matter, but the principle is the same. But hopefully when we come, that loss is going to take us to very slightly higher than where we started last time we had a loss. And that's the journey, that's the life of a later win bettor. Okay, and that's kind of that's we have to get our heads around that. Now, we may be better at continually losing and having one or two big wins, or we may be better at continually winning and coping with the fact, or accepting the fact that actually we're going to hit a loss that's going to wipe out most of our profit. Only you know which you're going to be better at. Only you know which you're going to be better at. So it's really important that you know this. But the truth here is that whatever we're doing, whether we're backing to win, late to win, back to place, late to place, whatever, however we're betting, this is always going to be a fact. We have to be psychologically prepared to lose, because there is absolutely no doubt we're going to be losing a hell of a lot. Okay, we're going to spend most of our times losing. We're going to be, we don't remember the wins. Apart from the odd lucky one that came in at 59-1 or something, we don't really remember the wins. We don't remember the wins at 3-1 or 4-1. They're just part of that journey of betting. We don't remember those. Yeah. But we remember the losses. The losses hit us hard. The losses are like 100 times harder than the wins are good. So we have to psychologically prepare ourselves to lose, because we're going to lose a lot. Okay. And whether it's a lot in terms of time, or whether it's a lot in terms of, whether it's a lot in terms of times that we're losing a lot because we've got a 30% strike rate and we're losing 7 out of 10 bets, or whether it's a lot because we've got a really high strike rate, but when we hit a loss, we lose a lot of our profit. Either way, we're losing a lot. We have to psychologically prepare ourselves. It has to not affect us. It has to not affect us if we want to win long term and make a profit. Hi, Dennis. Thanks for joining us. Thank you very much. It's great to see you here. Philippe, great question about backing lots of horses and contenders. I will come back to that. Great question. Thank you. Now, I want to clarify, this isn't all doom and gloom. Okay, this isn't, I know it sounds a little bit like doom and gloom, but it's actually not all doom and gloom, because actually this doesn't mean we're not going to make a long-term profit. We can make a long-term profit backing to win. We can make a long-term profit lean to win. We can make a long-term profit back to place, later place. However the heck we like, we can make a long-term profit. That's not the issue. The issue is we want to make sure that we're prepared for these losses, because most horse racing bettors don't make a long-term profit because they cannot cope psychologically with losing a lot. That's the bottom line. We stop and we change what we're doing. We stop and we change what we're doing. We stop and we change what we're doing. We've got to be consistent. You don't go and buy stocks in a company and when they drop a few points, you stop and you move out. And every week you're kind of flipping and flopping and flipping and flopping. You don't do that. People only do that in sports betting. And that's because the gambler's mindset overtakes the investment mindset. That's why. And we have to stop that. Okay, we have to stop that. Just because we're losing 7 out of 10 bets doesn't mean we'll make a profit. Just because we lose 90% of our profit in our later win selections when a loser comes in doesn't mean we're not going to make a long-term profit. Okay? So that's really important to understand. But the bottom line here, really, and what I'm trying to say, I guess, in summary, is that until you can cope with losing, you're going to find it impossible to win. Okay, until you can cope with losing, you will find it impossible to win. Losing is the cornerstone of profitable betting. We've got to be able to cope. We've got to be able to cope with it. Okay. Some great questions coming in here as well. And I'm going to come back to all of them. And if you've got any questions, please drop them in the comment section, in the chat section, whether if you're on YouTube, it's the chat. If you're on Facebook, it's the comments. Drop them in there if you've got any questions, please. Okay. Now, next. Now, I hope you like this photo. I spent a lot of time looking for it, and I found it quite entertaining. So let me just hide this for 1 second. Bear with me. I now can't find out how to hide the the text on the screen. Okay, there we go. Right. Losing streaks. Okay, losing streaks. You must know what you can cope with. Let's put that out here. You must know what you can cope with. I'm going to put this on the screen. Now, don't worry. You don't have to run across a football pitch naked. Okay? That's a promise. But you must know what you can cope with. Oh, Mark, you must tell him. You must tell him to stop doing that. It is not okay. It is not okay, Mark. For those of you who can't see what I'm talking about, Mark just mentioned this. Okay. You must tell him to stop that. Right. Okay, back to where we were. All right. You must know what you can cope with when it comes to losing streaks. Now, can you cope with 5 losers in a row? Back to back, we're talking about. Back to back. Can you cope with 5 losers in a row? Can you cope with 10 losers in a row? Can you cope with 20? Maybe you can cope with 30 losers in a row. Leave me a message. Drop it down right now. How many losers in a row can you cope with? Put them in right now. Okay. And while you're putting them in, I want to ask you another question. Okay. Say you think you can cope with 10 losers in a row. Now, imagine you have maybe 2 bets a day, 3 bets a day. Can you still cope with 10 losers in a row? At 2 bets a day, if you average 2 bets a day, 10 losers in a row is an entire week, Monday to Friday, every day losing, back to back. Can you cope with that? If you have 3 bets a day, it's 3 days, roughly. 3 and a bit. You know? If you have more, it's less. Okay, can you cope with 5 bets, 10 bets in a row, back to back? Loss. How many can you cope with? You must know how many losers in a row you can cope with before you go off piste. If you're a poker player, it's called tilt. Okay, and that means if you're not a poker player, what that means is how many losers can you cope with before you go on tilt, before you go nuts, before you start doing shit that you shouldn't be doing. Okay, like stuff where you're like, God, I'm pissed at this, so I'm going to start looking now for something else. I'm going to try and recover my losses. I'm going to try and place a bet on this horse just because I'm so annoyed that I lost on that one or that one didn't come in. How long till you start doing that stupid stuff? How many losers in a row before you start doing that stupid stuff? Okay, that's how many losers you can cope with in a row. And that number, when you start doing stupid stuff, you've gone too far. You got to put it back. Okay, so who we got here? We got 20, 10, 10. Philippe, the bigger the bankroll, the more losers I'd cope with. I want to come back to that, Philippe. That's a really interesting comment, and I really want to come back to that. Please remind me. I want to come back to that. I've got no way of marking it, but I'll scroll back and try and find it. 10. John, you said, John, absolutely. You've had over 20. Bob, should we only bet singles? Not necessarily. I will come back to that. No more than 10. I blow my lid. I can handle 3 or 4 in a row. Okay. There's a big difference between winners and profit. There is, Dennis. But what we're talking about here is losers. And I'm only focusing on losers because if we can't cope with these losers, if we can't cope with this losing streak, we're never going to get to the wins. We're never going to get to the profit because we're going to bail. We're going to pull out of the investment before the strategy has time to go through the losing streak. And I see it happen every day. I've had X amount of losers and it's no longer working. No, it probably is still working. Okay, it probably is still working. Absolutely fine, in fact. but you can't cope with that many losers in a row. And there's nothing to say that you should be able to cope with that many losers in a row. But you have to be able to cope with the amount of losers you're going to expect. So I want to just give you a quick example here, because we've had a range between 5 and 40. Okay. And Andy, being able to cope with 40 is amazing. So I just want to show you something quickly. Let me just share a different screen here for a second. Pardon me. Okay, here we go. Can I bring that up big? Can you see that table? I don't know if that table is big enough. Can you see that table? I want to try and get it. Hang on. I want to try and get it into the big part of the screen here, but I'm not sure I know how to do it. Let me make it a bit bigger. Oh, hold on. I know how to do it. Bear with me. There we go. Now you can see that table. Perfect. Okay. Now you can see that table. So we've had 5 losers in a row up to 40 losers in a row. Now let's just look at this briefly. We should always think about this over the course of a year. How many bets you got in a year? Okay. So if you've got 3 bets a day, that's roughly speaking 1,000 bets a year. Okay, that's the time frame we should be thinking of when we consider losing streaks, because the more we bet, the more likely we're going to hit a longer losing streak. So we have to account for at least a year of bets. Okay, if we have 5 bets a day, we've got about 1,500 bets a year, roughly, for a strategy. So let's pitch this at 3 bets a day, 1,000 bets a year, for argument's sake. Now, if you can only cope with 5 losers in a row, you have to have a 75% strike rate or higher. And someone said 4 losers in a row. That means you've got to have an 85% strike rate or higher at 3 bets a day to only expect 4 losers in a row. Ask yourself what strike rate you currently have. 10 losers in a row, you still need a 50% strike rate or higher. You still need a 50% strike rate or higher to only expect 10 losers back to back in a losing streak over the course of a year. And it could happen more than once, and you could have 10 losers in a row followed by 2 wins followed by 10 losers in a row, or 9 losers in a row. Obviously this is an estimate. You could potentially get 11, but roughly speaking. So once again, even with 10 losers in a row, now if we come down to 30% strike rate, which is kind of the average of where we were at when we were looking at strike rates that we thought were good, over 1,000 bets, this is 3 bets a day, only 3 bets a day, you can expect to have at least 19 losing bets back to back. And as I just said, you could have 19 losing bets back to back, 2 winners, and then another 18 losing bets back to back. And if you can't cope with that, if you go on tilt, to use the poker term, if we start doing stupid shit when this happens, we start betting on horses that are part of the strategy, we start changing the strategy, that's it. You're not going to make a profit because you can't get through that losing streak. If you can't get through that losing streak, you're never going to hit the up streak. You've got to be able to get through the losing streak to get to the up streak. So important. It's so important. And actually, if we start changing the strategy because we had 19 losing bets in a row, 4 winners, and then another 10 losing bets in the row, and we go, it's not working anymore. Well, it probably is. There's nothing statistically to say it's not working anymore. It's probably working fine. But you've stopped and you've changed it before you've given it a chance to actually work, before you've given that investment a chance to work. Because when we talk about horse racing betting as an investment, when we talk about it as a long-term profit, we're not talking about it like we're not talking about the individual bets here. We're talking about the process as a whole. We got to look at the strategy we're using as a whole as an investment strategy. We can't make decisions that go outside the statistical norm. Okay, let's come back over now to the slides. Okay. So, and I can see a lot of you are saying confidence in the system is super, super important. And Philippe, great question from Philippe here. I'm going to share it. Great question. Lots of people will be thinking this. Can you adapt the strategy when on a day it doesn't work, or change the statement? No, 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 no. Please, please do not. Because when you change something on a day, you're doing it on a tiny sample of data. Yet you're building your strategy, you're building your approach on a lot of data. We are building an investment strategy. You can't change it just because the stock, because the stocks have changed. I was going to say you can't change it just because one day it's not working. That would be like us buying stocks in a company. There's an argument with the CEO. The share price falls, and we jump out rather than waiting for the argument to finish and the share price to go back up again. If we jump out at that time, if we change at that time, every time, all we're going to be doing is loss, do something new, loss, do something new, loss, do something new, loss. We're never going to get to the profit part because we're never given us time to get there. Okay. And as Dennis has said on Facebook, if you can't see it, it's a business. So true. This is exactly it. It's a business. Okay. Now, continuing on with losing streaks, there's something super important. And it's weird. It's weird no one says this. At least it's weird to me no one says this. Okay? Well, let me rephrase. They do say it, but not often. And people don't say it because it's not good for marketing. Bottom line fact, losing streaks will happen. And as we just saw, they're going to happen a lot. Okay? They're going to happen a lot. In fact, they're more, certainly if you're back to win better, they're going to happen more often than winning streaks. And they're going to happen for longer. Okay, for argument's sake, you might get 6 weeks of losing streaks and then 1 week of winning streaks. Okay, that's normal. That's how it works. Losing streaks will happen. We have to be prepared for them. We have to psychologically be ready for them to take place. Okay, now I want to cover something here. And great questions. I can see the questions coming in thick and fast, which is awesome. Keep them coming in, please. I'm going to come back to them. Okay. Staking plans will not stop a losing streak. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what some blog post says. A staking plan will not stop a losing streak long term. It will just make it worse. Okay. Fact, mathematically, bottom line. A staking plan cannot stop a losing streak. And the people who tell you it can are out of their mind. Okay. And the theory behind why it can, the whole kind of argument that's put forward why it can is because we recover our losses. It's fine. We recover our losses. Bollocks. It doesn't work. Here's why it doesn't work. Okay. Here's why it doesn't work. It may work in the short term. It may work sometimes. Long term, it does not work. And here's the reason. When you use a staking plan to recover your losses, you bet more after every loss. Okay? Doesn't matter what the staking plan is. Could be the retirement, could be a martingale, could be a Labouchiere, it could be any staking plan. Any staking plan will try and recover its losses by staking more after a loss. It's logical. I'm trying to recover my losses. What that means is we are betting more money on the losing bets than we bet on the winning bets. We are betting more money using a staking plan on the losing bets than we bet on the winning bets. And the result of that is it reduces your return on investment. And eventually you'll hit a losing streak that is so long, it reduces that return on investment to negative. And when that happens, you'll have found your entire bankroll's gone. Staking plans will not stop a losing streak. It may kind of get you over them in the short term occasionally, but eventually you will hit one it cannot cope with because you are betting more on the losers than the winners. And that's if we take the maths right down to the bottom, that's what's happening. When we recover losses, we bet more on losing bets. And if I was to come to you outside of a staking plan and say, do you know what? This horse is going to lose. So why don't you bet 100 quid on that horse? And this horse is going to win. So why don't you bet 25 quid on that horse? You think I was mental. Like, you'd be like, what are you talking about? I'm not about 100 quid on a losing horse. Yet that's what bettors do every single day when they use a staking plan. Okay. Absolutely nuts. A staking plan will not stop your losing streak from happening. There's only one thing that we can do here, and that is to make sure your strike rate is high enough to only give you losing streaks you can cope with. So if you can only keep with 4 losers in a row, you have to have a strategy that wins 80% plus of your bets. It is that simple. Then you can cope with them. That is the only thing we can do. That is why we have to know what losing streaks we can cope with, and we have to know what strike rate we need to statistically get them. If you can cope with 10 losers in a row, you have to have a strategy, an approach that wins 50% or more of the time. And it may be that you find 50% or more winners, or it may be that you use 80-20 bets, Dutch bets, back to place. It may be your bet structure that gives you that higher strike rate rather than the horses. But it doesn't matter where it comes from. The only way we can tackle this is by having a strike rate which is high enough to only give us the losing streaks we can cope with. Absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. If we do that, if we understand that we're going to get losing streaks, if we expect them, if we have planned for them, if we understand that we're going to lose more than we win, and we have accepted that, if we have built a strategy around the fact that it has a strike rate that's only likely to give us losing streaks that we are comfortable with, or within a range that we're comfortable with, now we're setting ourselves up to win rather than setting ourselves up to lose. Okay. Next, I'd like to look at downswing duration. Because we talked about losing streaks, and losing streaks is fine. We got those now. I hope you've got those now. I hope you've got those in your mind, and that's awesome. Now we're into downswings. Because these are the next thing that we have to fight. Because if we're going to build this profitable investment strategy, we got to tackle all the bad stuff that comes first before we start. We got to be prepared for it. We got to have the fortress built. We're not going into battle with a penknife. We want to go into battle with the fortress and a moat and a drawbridge and an army. We got to be prepared. Okay, we got to be prepared. So we've understood we're going to get losing streaks. We've understood either we're going to win a lot and then lose a lot and then win occasionally, or we're going to win a lot and then lose most of our profit. We're expecting that. We've thought about the losing streaks, the back-to-back losers we could cope with. We've planned our strategy around having a strike rate high enough to be able to allow us to deal with that, so we can actually get through that losing streak out the other side into profit. Now we've got to look at the downswings, and these are the hardest ones of all. These are like the trebuchet, the big rocks that are set on fire that are flung at the fortress walls. These are the big ones. The downswing duration. This is a downswing is how long from a new high point does it take to get to another new high point? So let's say we made a profit of £1,000, and then obviously we're going to win some, we're going to lose some, we're going to win some, we're going to lose some. But over a period of time, that we might lose a whole load, we might hit a losing streak, we might come to 750, and we might win some and go back to 800 or 900, and then lose some and go back to 600, and win some and go back up to like 900 or whatever. How long does it take from that £1,000 high point to get to the next £1,000 high point, or the £1,001 high point or higher? More importantly, what is the longest period of time between those 2 points? What is the longest period of time possible between those 2 points? Now, if we have a 30% strike rate and we're expecting to lose 20 bets back to back, and we're betting 3 horses a day, well, immediately we could go for 3 weeks pretty much without a single winning bet anyway. But then we could do that, and we could get a couple of wins and a few losers, a couple of wins and a few losers. At that point, that downswing at a 30% strike rate potentially could last 6 months. It could be 6 months between your highest point and your next highest point. Doesn't mean the strategy is not working. Doesn't mean you're not going to end the year in a profit. Now, 6 months is quite extreme in that particular example. More likely, you're going to get more ones around 3 months, 10 to kind of maybe 16 weeks sort of time frames. But you could get a 6 month downswing. And you could still end the year in a profit with a good return on investment. But once again, we got to be able to cope with the downswing. We've got to be able to cope with the downswings. Downswings, let me put this up here because this is so important. Downswings can last. I need to show it, don't I? That would help. Downswings can last 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and even longer if you bet on high odds horses. Downswings can last a phenomenally long time compared to what most of us would expect. And if you can't cope with that downswing, you're going to pull out of that strategy halfway through the downswing before it's ever had a chance to get to its latest high point. And you might look at it on a graph. You see these graphs of profit and they're kind of, it looks nice and it goes up, but then look along the bottom and see how many bets there are. You know, often these graphs that are shown on tipster sites and stuff, they're done over like 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. And when you actually look at the time frames of those downswings, they're like months and months. Sometimes you see on a promotional website a graph that looks great, and actually you dig in and you look at it and there's like a downswing of 8 months, 9 months, 10 months. Now, most bettors cannot cope with that. And that's normal. That's normal. But it goes hand in hand with losing streaks. You know, but you have to be able to cope with the losing streak. You have to be able to cope with the downswing. If you cannot cope with them, if you're going to go on tilt during either of those events, the strategy will never work for you. It will never be profitable for you. It could be profitable for your neighbor. It could be profitable for me or some other person. Doesn't matter. They're not you. They might be happy to sit for a year in a downswing. Might not bother them. Has to work for you. It's personal. Has to work for you. If you can't cope with it, and you've got to be honest with yourself, there's nothing wrong with not being able to cope with it. Just because people tell you that a 30% strike rate is a really good strike rate, or 20%, or it's got high odds, so it's okay, doesn't matter. The lower your strike rate, the longer the losing streaks, the longer the potential downswings are going to be. A 30% strike rate with 3 bets a day, you can expect to have regular downswings of at least 3 months. And it wouldn't be unheard of to have downswings of 6 months. You have to be able to get up, place your bets every day for 6 months while you're in that downswing. Okay. And great questions still coming in. John, I can see the questions coming in. Please keep dropping them in. I've got one, a little bit more, maybe 10 minutes. I'm going to come to these questions because they're so good. Okay. So, yeah. Downswings, very important. And here is why I reckon most bettors lose, to be honest. Because most bettors stop before the downswing is finished. It's not that the strategy doesn't work. It's not that they can't find winning horses. It's that they can't cope with the losing streaks and they can't cope with the downswing, so they stop. They assume it doesn't work. They assume the strategy doesn't work. They assume their selection doesn't work before the downswing is even finished. Before the downswing is even finished. They never even get to the start of the upswing, let alone leave it long enough to get to the top of the upswing before the next downswing starts. And this is the day-to-day reality of profitable betting. It's made up of downswings and upswings. And the downswings are always going to be longer than the upswings if you are backing to win. If you're laying to win, then the upswings are always going to be longer than the downswings. But when the downswing hits, it's going to lose huge amounts of your profit. And I mean like 80, 90%. We have to be able to cope. Now, finally, before I come to the questions, I just want to look at understanding return on investment and bankrolls, because this ties into everything we've been talking about today. And it is so important. You cannot win if you don't do this. Okay, return on investment and bankrolls are super important. And what I'm about to put on your screen now is going to seem like common sense, but I would guarantee at least 50%, probably more like 75 or 80% people who are with me live here now, if you're honest, aren't prepared to do this. Here we go. You have to be prepared to lose your entire bankroll, the whole thing. You have to be prepared to lose it. I don't mean lose 20% of it. I don't mean lose 50% of it. I mean lose 100% of it. You have to be prepared to lose 100% of your bankroll. 100%. Now, you can have more money in your betting account than you're basing your stakes on. That's fine. Like if you just like your betting account to feel safe, and let's say you want £500 bankroll, but you want to put £1,000 in your betting account because it just makes you feel more comfortable. That's fine, as long as your stakes are only worked out on the amount of money you are prepared to 100% lose. Because if you put £1,000 into your betting account and you work out your stakes based on that £1,000, but you are actually only prepared to lose £250, you are overstaking by 400%. If you're only prepared to lose £500 before you're going to get itchy feet, cold feet, go on tilt, you're still staking by over double. And if you're overstaking by that degree, you will lose your bankroll because it will not be able to cope with the downswings and the losing streaks. Okay. So you have to be prepared to lose 100% of your bankroll. Now, your bankroll obviously has to be big enough to cover the losing streaks and the downswings. So here's a kind of a rough guide as to what I would recommend. Okay. Here's a rough guide to what I would recommend. You should have at least 10 times the longest expected losing streak. 5 is very risky, 15 is very safe. So if you've got a 30% strike rate and you're betting 3 bets a day, you need really at least 200 unit bankroll. And I don't care if you're with a tipster service and they say, well, we've got a 30% strike, but you only need 50 units. You will lose that 50 units. Mathematically, you are almost guaranteed to lose that 50 units. You've got to stake properly. And most people, when they suggest bankrolls and stakes, they don't put the right amount because they think it will scare people off from their services. They think it will make people think, oh, but that's a lot of units. How am I ever going to make a profit? We're going to come to that in a minute. That's why people put, oh, you only need 50 units or 75 units. 100 units is the standard. 100 units is not really enough for 30% strike rate. It's going to be very squeaky bum. Okay, 100 units is going to be very squeaky bum. You really need 200 units. And even 300 while it's playing very safe. Okay. Now, the alternative way of working this out is to do it like this. 3 to 5 times your biggest downswing. Now, pretty often this is going to be very similar to 10 times the expected losing streak because obviously they are intrinsically linked. But it's just another way of working it out. 3 to 5 times the biggest downswing. Personally, I actually look at both, and usually I take the bigger one because I like to play it safe. But understanding the amount you need in your bankroll is so important if you want to keep it and if you want to grow it. Okay, now I want to just briefly look at return on investments and expectations of what you can get from return on investment. Okay. Now, let's start by looking at this. If you can make a 5% return on investment, and in horse racing that is 5% on turnover, that is mind-blowingly incredible. Okay? Every bet you place, you can expect to make an average of 5% back. That's like I give you 100 quid, you give me 105 back. I give you 100 quid, you give me 105 back. Again and again and again. 3 times a day, if we've got a bet 3 times a day. We're not going to win like that. We've already understood that. We've been through that. We know it's going to go in peaks and troughs. But on average, over a year, over 2 years, over 5 years, I'm going to give you 100 quid 3 times a day. I'm going to get 105 pounds back. That's what it means. That is incredible. That is actually mind-blowing incredible. Now, I'm not saying you can't get higher than that. You can get higher than that. What I'm saying is that actually 5% should be your base level. If you can make 5% on turnover, you are doing absolutely phenomenally well. as an investment. You are outperforming any other investment that you can even imagine without huge risk. And if you do that, you're going to be able to grow your bankroll probably by about 20% a month. Now let's just look at that, because expectations for horse racing bettors are insane. Expectations for horse racing bettors are based on advertising wins, where they say this guy placed a £1 accumulator and walked away with 100 grand, or they're based on tipsters who say you could have made £15,000 from 50 quid bets last month. Okay, this stuff is all short term. This stuff is all gambling. It's chance, it's luck, and if you want to do that, that's fine. Go and do that. But that's not what we're here about. We're here about making long-term profit. That means making investments. That means making sensible decisions. And growing your bankroll by 20% in a month is incredible. And you can do that with a 5% return on investment, or 5% on turnover. Growing your bankroll 20% a month means you are doubling it twice a year. Twice a year. Even when interest rates were 5%, it would take you 20 years to double it once in a bank. We're talking about doubling it twice a year. And exactly, Philippe. And this is the mistake a lot of people make. When you talk about a 5% return on investment, we are talking about it on a per bet basis. We're not talking about it like the banks do it, a 5% APR. That's an annual return. That's an annual return. We're talking about it on average per bet. On average per bet. It's mind-blowing, that profit level. Mind-blowing, that profit level. So what I want to do is I want to set right now some realistic expectations of actually what's achievable. This isn't what some website has told you. This isn't what some tipster has told you you can make. This isn't like we made 15 grand last month from 50 quid bets. That information is irrelevant. They might have made 15 grand last month from 50 quid bets, but next month they might lose 20. It doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. We want long-term return on investment figures. We're investing. We want long-term return on investment figures. Okay, that's what we're interested in. So here's some numbers for you. Okay, here's some numbers that are going to actually make sense. Here's some numbers that are actually realistic. And it might shock you, but bear with me, okay? Bear with me. Now, I'm going to put this up on the screen and talk through it, because it can be quite hard to keep the numbers in your head. We go. Oh, okay. It's not gonna let me show the whole amount. Hang on a second. Okay, it's not gonna let me show the whole amount. So I'm gonna do it in sections. Let's do the section first. Okay. Here we go. Right. If you have a £1,000 bankroll, and we've got these 3 selections a day, which is the average, that's the most common one, that's what people like. And let's assume we only need 100 units. So we've got probably a higher strike rate than 30%, because we really want 200 units for that. Let's assume we've only got 100 units. And we're placing £10 bets from our £1,000 bankroll. This means we're betting £900 a month. Now, have I got that right? Sometimes I get my maths wrong, as you would have seen in the email the other day. 3 selections a day is £30 a day. 30 days a month, £900 a month. Now, before I move on, I want to draw your attention to the fact that we got a £1,000 bankroll, and using £10 bet, we are betting almost that entire bankroll in value every single month on only 3 bets a day. Okay? Every month. Now, if we're making a 5% return on investment on every bet, that's about a £45 profit a month. And at first glance, you're probably going to go, that's nothing. What are you talking about? £1,000 bankroll. I'm making £45 a month. It's not worth it. So let's just pull back for a second. And think about a 5% APR, which you can't get anywhere near in a bank anyway at the moment. I think it's like 0.01%. But let's just assume we're back in the days when actually the banks had a decent interest rate. And even 5%. At some point they used to have 15%, but let's just say 5%. Again, keep it numbers simple. In a bank, you'd have made that £45 in your bank account over 12 months. Not 1 month. It would have taken 12 months to make the same figure. Okay? 12 months. What we're actually making in that 12-month period, assuming we don't reinvest anything or do anything like that, just take it out, we're making £590 a year, or a 59% return on investment over the year. 59% a year. That number is mind-blowing. Mind-blowing. Yeah, when we talk about a 5% return on investment, people are, it's not very much. It is huge. It is huge. We have to get away. If we want to make a long-term profit, we've got to get away from this gambler's expectation that we can invest £1,000 today and walk away with £15,000 tomorrow. We cannot do that. We cannot do that. But if we invest £1,000 today and walk away without any form of reinvestment and walk away with nearly £600 at the end of a year, you can't get that anywhere. There is nowhere else you can get that without massive, massive risk. I mean, if we buy a property, we're going to get 8% a year if we're doing well. If we rent out a property, we're going to get 8% a year. So if we invested £50,000 in a property, £50,000 in a property, we're going to be lucky to make £4,000 a year from 50,000. Okay. Now, of course, it's possible that your bets may make more than a 5% return on investment. But what I'm saying is 5% return on investment is the point where you should be, I am doing really well. I am not going to change anything. And if you want more profit, there are two things that you can do. If you want more profit, well, actually, there's one thing that you can do initially if you want more profit. And here it is. You need to invest more money. It's that simple. And if you're not happy with the risk of investing more money, that's fine. But if you actually want to make a long-term profit, if you wanted to make a profit this year, next year, 3 years, 5 years, if you want to be the person that invests in horse racing long-term profitable, don't reduce your bankroll to make bigger stakes, because you will end up losing your bankroll. The only way you can do that is to invest more money. Alternatively, if you don't want to invest more money, straight off the bat like that, which is fair enough, you reinvest your profit into your bankroll. And that grows it for you, called compounding. I'm sure you're familiar with. You reinvest your profit into your bankroll. But if you start messing about with staking plans and reducing the number of units so that you get bigger stakes, you will end up losing your bankroll. That is guaranteed. That is for sure. Because you are no longer at that point investing in your horse racing strategy. You are now gambling. And we have to stop that to make this long-term profit. The only proviso I would put, if you use compounding, and I'm sure a lot of you use compounding where you reinvest your profit back in, please, please, please always take out at least 30% of your profits. Because there is a risk. Even if you're doing everything right, there's a risk you can lose your entire bankroll. Always take out 30% of your profits. Always, always, always take out a minimum of 30% of your profits. And do that at the very least until you have paid yourself back your initial investment into that bankroll. At the very least. But I would recommend you do it full stop all the time, every time. Whether it's a 50p profit this week or this month, or £2,000 profit this week or this month. It doesn't matter. Take it out. Psychologically, you need to remove something. And this is the other trap most bettors fall into. Most bettors fall into this trap of, I want to make more money, so I'm going to just keep investing my profit back in and make the stakes bigger and bigger. And then they hit a losing streak, and then they get worried by the losing streak because they're not taking anything out yet. And then they pull out of the strategy because it's no longer working. And then we're kind of back to square one. You have to take out. You put in time, effort, investment, you got to take it out. Psychologically, it's a must, even if it's 50p. It should just be automatic. The amount of money doesn't matter. It's the process. And we're trying to set up investment type processes here for ourselves. It's the process of taking that 30% out weekly or monthly or bi-weekly, doesn't matter. New profit high, 30%. New profit high, 30% of that profit. Always comes out. You've got to take out. You've got to take out as well. Okay, John's just said, however, the 50k on property is not at risk unless the property bubble bursts. I actually know some people at the moment whose houses are worth less than they bought them for in central London area, or greater central London, I should say. They're certainly not in Piccadilly or anything. But yeah, their houses are definitely not worth what they paid for them 5 or 6 years ago now. I admit that the risk on property is far less than on gambling, but your return is also less. So as with any form of investment, the risk is outweighed. But if we get a good horse racing strategy that's built around you, that is built around expectations that are achievable, realistic, with bankrolls and strike rates that work for you, it can be one of the best long-term investments out there. But we've got to have the mindset of investors. Okay, right. I'm going to come now to the questions. I'm going to come through, have a look. I know there's quite a few here, so bear with me a second while I scroll through them and come to them. I'm just going to spend the next 10, 15 minutes going through questions before we wrap it up for the day. Okay. Philippe, okay. Is this why it's better to back as many contenders as we can rather than just a few each day? So what Philippe is talking about here is volume betting. Volume betting. Now, volume betting is a different game. Most of us aren't comfortable with volume betting because losing streaks and downswings can happen very, very quickly. And when I say volume betting, I mean a minimum of 10 bets a day. But usually we're talking more like 20, 30 plus, possibly 50, 60, even as many as 100. That's volume betting. And volume betting is a bit of a different game because we actually are prepared to accept usually less than a 5% return on investment because we are talking about volume. So let's just say we've got our £2,000 bankroll, we've got 200 units and we're placing £10 a unit. Okay. Now imagine if we're making, I don't know, 3%. Let's just say 3% on bets. And we're doing 50 bets a day as a volume better. Okay, that means we are actually turning that bankroll. We are betting 25% of the value of our bankroll every single day. Okay, and that £500 a day at 3% is, I think it's 15 quid, isn't it? Yeah, it's £15 profit a day on average in the great scheme of things. £15 profit a day, and obviously over the course of a month, that's around £500 profit. So we're actually doing massive growth here, but we're doing it on volume. Okay, we're doing it on volume. Now, most bettors aren't comfortable with volume. And if you're not sure, here's where I generally stand with volume betting. Volume betting needs to be more systematic because you need more selections. And because it's more systematic, this will generally appeal to people who want portfolio type betting. You want to have maybe 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 20, 50 kind of approaches where it can be pretty much automatically found, but you're accepting the fact that the advantage you've got on the selections is significantly lower and they may collapse at any point. But it's okay because your time is spent creating new ones and moving them into testing phases, and then when finishing testing phases into the portfolio. So you are managing, your actual job is managing that portfolio, creating new ones, putting them in, checking the existing ones, moving the ones that are failing out. Okay. But with 3 or 4 or 5 selections a day, generally speaking, I would always say you want to use a contender process and FMFR without any shadow of a doubt. Okay, coming back here. Just a message from John here, which is absolutely right. What we do at Race Advisor and Race Advisor Pro, if you're not a member of Race Advisor Pro, you can join at raceadvisor.co.uk/join. But if you're not a member of Race Advisor Pro, this is exactly what we do. We use contender processes. That I call foundational strategies. We use those to limit our losses, to shortlist horses, to limit losses, and ideally make small profits. But if it's not a small profit, it's a very small loss around break even, so that we can find contenders very, very fast. And then we only need to spend 5 or 6 minutes on them, just checking whether they're likely to perform in today's race. And that's because of the weakness. We're taking advantage of the weakness in systematic processes. And what we're doing is we're taking advantage of the strengths in the systematic processes, and then we're removing the weaknesses from them and doing something different. Bob, Delu is probably an excellent place to study form. And John, this is exactly it, John. This is exactly it. If you want to make a long-term profit from horse racing, you have to treat it as an investment over the long term, and that has to be your strategy. You have to treat your strategy, your approach, your methodology, your system, whatever it is, you're going to treat that as your investment. What it invests in is what it invests in. We will get that working. Well, if you're a member of Race Advisor Pro, I will help you get that working. But when it comes to the psychology around it, we've got to make sure you're prepared for it to be able to sustain it. But it's the strategy you're using that has to be viewed in the long term. The strategy you're using. We can't swap and chip and chop and change strategies. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And again, if I bring you back to poker, for those of you who are poker players, you got to think of long-term horse racing betting like grinding out profit on a poker table. You play a solid strategy and you just keep playing it and playing it and playing it and playing it, and you go through the downswings and the upswings and the downswings, and at the end of the day, you're going to end up with a pretty much predictable X percentage return. That's what we're in. That's the business we're in. Okay. Great message here from Philippe. And I want to bring this up, Philippe, because the bigger the bankroll, the more losers you come with, which is exactly right. But let me give you an example here where actually these are the same thing. Because whatever bankroll you've got, it should allow you to cope with the losers. So, for example, I'm running a strategy, and we have, I can't remember, we had 30 or 40 units loss over April, beginning of May, but it only affected about 20%, 18% of the bankroll. And because the bankroll was structured correctly, and it doesn't matter whether I was betting £1, £100, or £1,000. The only thing that changes there is the size, the amount of money we need for the bankroll, But the point was that at 18% down, it doesn't matter. I'm not even vaguely worried about it. Most of the time, I'm not even going to draw down to anywhere near 50% of my bankroll if I'm bankrolled properly. I might occasionally hit it. I might occasionally go over it. But it's going to be comparatively rare because I'm bankrolled properly. And that's the mistake people make. They think, well, I'm not getting anywhere near even half of this, so I can double my stakes. But you can't, because psychologically, that's going to make you lose. There we come here. Just a message from Dennis, not a question, but a very true statement. There is a huge difference between winners and profit. Okay, coming down here, just coming through the question. Okay, Matthew, great message from Matthew here, who tries to have a few different strategies to overlap to help cover the losing streak. And this is a great portfolio approach where we have multiple strategies, each targeting in a different way to try and level out those downswings and losing streaks. So you might have a back to place, a late to place, a back to win, a late to win, so that actually some are making lots of winners and then we lose a lot of profit. Some are not having many winners and making a lot of profit in an attempt to level them out. The only thing we got to be aware of is that at some point when you do this, They're all going to hit their losing streaks at the same time. It's just how it is. And we got to expect that time to come. But it doesn't matter as long as we're prepared for it. We talked about that one. Pardon me. Ray, how do we assess if a strategy is any good? Okay, I can't get into too much detail on this, but I can do this in another live stream. How do we assess if a strategy is any good? In fact, let me just put that onto my notes for a live stream so that I don't forget it. Oh, my notes has just gone wrong. Okay, let me just make a note. No, I'll use a pen and paper. Let's go for the good methods here. How to assess a strategy. Okay, well, I'll very briefly tell you, and it's really simple. So we want to do first of all, we want to build a strategy. It's a bit different if we're building it systematically or not. If we're building it systematically, we must use out of sample data. I'll cover that later. Otherwise, we've got to have assessed it over a big enough amount of selections, live selection. The minimum is 100 winners. You must have at least 100 winning bets in your sample before you can make any kind of assessment. If you make a change to it, you need another 100 winners before you can make any real statistical assessment. And even that's pretty low. But you've got to have at least 100 winners, whether they're historic or live or whatever. We need 100 winners. Then we use a combination of strike rate, expected losing streaks, return on investments, downswings, chi-square, and AE, or impact value. Okay. We use a combination of this information. We're looking for something where there is a positive AE. It shows we have an advantage, an expected advantage. We're looking for something where we've got an ROI that is high enough. We're looking for something that's got a strike rate that relates to the losing streaks and the downswings that we can cope with. Then, if it looks like it's making a profit, we break it down into years. Let's say we've done this over historic data from 2018 or 17 up to modern day. Now, we break it down into years. Has it made a profit each of those years? It has. That's great. Now let's break it down into quarters. Has it made a profit for most of the quarters? That gives us an understanding of the strategy and how it works. If a strategy has made a profit for the last few years, but 2020, 2021, it's all in loss, not so much confidence there. We need to probably go back to the drawing board, make some adjustments. Okay, that's a big topic, and I can look into that in another live. Okay, Philippe, can you up your staking plan during a winning streak? Now you can, and there are ways to do this, but generally I wouldn't recommend it. Not until you're very, very confident and comfortable in what you're doing and you're comfortable in the plan. The best way is to stake based on odds. Okay, that is the best way. There is no better way. Flat staking is more risky, but will often see a higher bankroll growth initially. But the best way is to stake based on odds. We are risking an amount of money in relation to the odds of our selection. And it makes sense because that means that a horse that is odds on, we're going to bet a lot more money on it. And it makes sense because a horse that's odds on is far more likely to win than a 50 to 1. So we should always, the ultimate staking is staking based on odds. And another great message here from Dennis. If you think about it logically, all businesses must have a plan. Why would you risk your hard-earned money without it? Yeah? It's up here. Okay. I think we're coming to the last few questions here. Coming down. Dennis, again, absolutely. Reward yourself. It's so important. And Philippe, this is exactly it. This is what it's been about all morning. It's about managing loss. Profitable betting is about managing losses. That's why I call this profitable losing, because that's what it is. It's all about loss management. Absolutely loss management. James, I have identified 100 plus micro systems with high strike rates, but do not have high volumes of bets. How do you go about identifying those that are worth pursuing as a system? James, this depends very much on the volume of bet. Sorry, not on the volume of bet. The volume of bet. Are we talking about like one bet a month, or when we're talking about micro systems, it might only be 10, 15 bets a year kind of thing. That's a different way of managing a portfolio again, and can definitely be done, but does require a slightly different approach. Probably haven't got time to go into that today, but drop that into our Facebook group. Okay, James, if you have a lot of systems, do you have bankrolls for each one, or do you lump them all together? Really good question. You can actually do it either way. My personal preference is, for management's sake, I have one bankroll. But you can manage that in two ways. You either manage your single bankroll as you manage a single bankroll across your whole portfolio. So your portfolio has its strike rate, and that strike rate and the long term is how you kind of base your bankroll. Alternatively, you have your single bankroll, and within it, you've got all your other ones. But the easiest way is to have a single bankroll and do it based on odds. If you stake based on odds, it becomes irrelevant, because each strategy will have its own strike rate, its own losing streak, its own theoretical bankroll. So that strategy might only stake X% based on odds. Okay? So it's always changing dynamically for each one based on the odds, and we're always maximizing each stake for each strategy in our bankroll based on the odds of the selections and the expected losing streak for the approach. That, without doubt, is the easiest way. John, is this where points committed come in? I'm not quite sure I'm following what you mean, but leave me a comment and I will come back to that. And I would like to just finish with this message from Dennis, because it's so true. Okay. The most important message difference between here is between gambling and investment mindset. It is. The most important message difference is between gambling and investment is mindset. And if you want to make a long-term profit from horse racing, you have to have an investment mindset. Absolutely key. Okay, if you still got any questions, please do drop them below. If you are a Race Advisor Pro member, you can keep asking me questions in our private Facebook group. Please come there. If you're not a Race Advisor Pro member, please head to raceadvisor.co.uk/join if you are interested in becoming one. All the information you've got there, but you can contact me whenever you need it. I'm going to thank you so much for joining me this morning. If you've got any other questions, you know where I am, just drop them down. I'll look forward to seeing you in the next live stream. Thank you very much indeed. Have an absolutely wonderful week, and I'll look forward to seeing you really, really soon. Take care.